Did you know that Thrash was originally developed under titles like Beneath the Storm and Shiver? Directed by Tommy Wirkola and produced by Adam McKay, this Netflix hit isn't just another shark movie. It's a deep dive into survival, climate anxiety, and the primal urge to protect life against all odds. Today, we're peeling back 13 narrative layers of hidden details and symbolism in Thrash. Despite being set in a small coastal town in South Carolina, the movie was actually filmed in Melbourne, Australia. Also, one of the primary sharks has a yellow tracking tag on its fin, suggesting the sharks may have been part of a coastal study on migration patterns. They weren't hunting humans by choice. They were pushed into the town by the sheer force of the storm surge, making them just as much victims of the disaster as the people. Real-world inspiration. While the Hurricane Henry in the film is fictional, its depiction of survivors trapped in urban attics and submerged streets nods to real-world disaster footage from events like Hurricane Katrina. The following are details you might have missed while watching the movie. 1. The invisible scent of fear. In the opening scene, look at Dakota's photos on her nightstand. You'll see she was a competitive swimmer. Her agoraphobia began after a traumatic accident involving her former coach. This explains why she's terrified of the water at first, but still possesses the elite swimming skills needed to survive the climax. Dakota's Whitney Peak survival in the middle of the swarm isn't just plot armor, it's biological strategy. Bull sharks are bump and bite predators that rely heavily on electroreception and movement. By entering a state of tonic immobility or sensory freeze due to her intense agoraphobia, Dakota's heart rate drops and her movements become rhythmic rather than erratic. The sharks, sensing her lack of struggle vibration, perceive her more like a piece of drifting debris than dying prey, allowing her to stay invisible in plain sight until the moment she strikes. 2. Agoraphobia versus the open sea. Dakota's arc in agoraphobia versus the open sea is driven by a psychological cage that only becomes survivable once the outside world, rendered terrifying by floodwater, invades her own home. Trapped by the fear of open spaces, she faces the most dangerous version of the outside when the town begins to flood. The rising water physically forces her to outrun the mental paralysis of agoraphobia. In this sense, the film acts as the internal hurricane. The disaster becomes a metaphor for personal crisis and violent rebirth, where leaving safety stops being a choice she can avoid and becomes a necessity she must confront. That transformation culminates in the final choice. Dakota's decision to dive into the submerged basement to save Lisa isn't only an act of courage, it's the final, irreversible collapse of her agoraphobia. By entering the most enclosed, dangerous space rather than fleeing it, she effectively kills the fear that once defined her limits, completing her psychological breakthrough through direct confrontation rather than avoidance. 3. The symbolism of the harpoon. Dakota's harpoon gun is the only bridge between her agoraphobic safety and the shark-filled water. It represents her reaching out and taking agency. When she finally fires it to save Lisa, it marks her transition from an observer of her own life to a participant in the survival of others, signaling a violent psychological rebirth. 4. The water birth irony. The film's water birth irony hinges on how control and choice collapse under nature's pressure. Lisa's mother repeatedly pesters her about having a water birth, a darkly comedic setup that cruelly pays off in the final act when Lisa is forced to give birth while submerged in a shark-infested flood. What was framed like a planned delivery becomes a desperate struggle for life in nature's delivery room, turning expectation into survival and highlighting the same theme of lost agency that drives the movie's disasters. That moment of birth then resolves into the newborn's first breath, the baby crying the moment the characters reach the roof, surrounded by miles of water and shark fins. It symbolizes that life persists even in a hostile environment, echoing Children of Men, where hope survives as something tiny and fragile amid total breakdown. Even Lisa's personal journey is threaded into the symbolism. Her nursery is painted deep sea blue, and her move to the coastal town to escape a high-pressure city career subtly suggests she was searching for calm, making the storm's violence feel like a final, cruel reversal of her intentions. Meanwhile, Officer Miller's unresolved human stakes linger in the details. The child's first drawing taped to the dashboard of his submerged patrol car points to a cut subplot about his estranged son, underscoring why he keeps pushing himself to save the younger characters, even when the world has turned into an endless, dangerous ocean. 5. The symbolism of birth versus destruction. Lisa is heavily pregnant throughout the film. Her water breaking during the literal flooding of the town creates a symbolic parallel between the beginning of life and the end of her known world. Welcome to the next layer, Nellie the Protector. In a rare subversion of the Jaws trope, Nellie, the great white shark, acts as an accidental protector. By consuming the aggressive bull sharks at the end, she represents the apex balance of nature. It suggests the environment isn't inherently evil. It simply follows a hierarchy that humans can occasionally benefit from if they survive the chaos. 7. Nature as a mirror. Analysts suggest the sharks aren't villains, but symbols of a displaced natural order. The movie highlights how human encroachment and climate change dissolve the boundaries between safe, human spaces and the wild. 8. Climate change as the antagonist. Hurricane Henry isn't just a plot device. It's a commentary on accelerated global warming. The storm intensifies from a Category 2 to a Category 6, monster due to record warm waters. Producer Adam McKay intended the film to reflect a heightened reality, where nature strikes back with unpredictable ferocity. 9. Predators versus parasites. The film draws a sharp parallel between the bull sharks and the foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Olsen. While the sharks are literal predators, the foster parents are described as cruel and parasitic, hoarding welfare checks and food meant for the children. Their deaths provide a grim liberation, suggesting that some human environments can be just as toxic as a shark-infested flood. 10. The Lego set design. Production designer David Ingram built the sets in 3 distinct levels, physically removing lower floors with a crane to simulate the flood. This practical effect symbolizes the erosion of the middle-class safe space. As the physical structure of the home disappears, the characters lose their social and domestic safety and are reduced to their basic instincts. 11. Director's signature. Fans of Tommy Wirkola will recognize his wicked sense of humor from films like Dead Snow. Thrash includes several absurd moments, such as a creative use of dynamite and a satirical needle drop of the song A Thousand Miles during a high-stress labor scene. 12. McKay's Meats and corporate Easter eggs. Lisa works at McKay's Meats, a subtle nod to producer Adam McKay. Beyond the joke, it places Lisa in a world defined by the processing of flesh, foreshadowing the film's central conflict, where humans themselves become meat for the sharks entering the town. Lastly, the sound of the invisible threat. Director Tommy Wirkola used sound design to make the environment oppressive. The low-frequency thrum of the water and the muffled echoes of buildings collapsing create a sense of being pre-hunted. The sharks are often felt through vibrations or shadows before they're seen, mirroring the invisible but constant pressure of the rising tide. The finale of Thrash is a bittersweet survival moment that shifts from horror to a metaphor for endurance. The final shot of the sun rising over the flooded town signifies a reset. The old world is gone, and the survivors are literally standing on the only remaining high ground, forced to start over. The film ends with another storm appearing on the radar. This represents the new normal of the 2026 setting. Survival isn't a one-time event, it's a cycle. The characters may have escaped the sharks, but they haven't escaped the changing world, leaving the audience with the haunting realization that the next Thrash is just around the corner. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, and please subscribe for more deep dives like this.